Does this make you feel nostalgic?
Once again, I stand atop the broken bodies of my enemies, victorious, but not unscarred.
I want to talk about what art, consciousness, and nostalgia really are, and we're going to start with video games. The question of what is art tends to come up a lot. You can go with the obvious answer, something created primarily for aesthetic purposes and judged for its beauty and meaningfulness, but I don't like that answer. I find it limiting. Art can be popular, it can be long-lasting, hidden, or exist in a single blink of an eye. Art can be horrifying or uplifting. It can be anything, any object, sound, rhythm, action, or set of actions that a portion of us agree imparts feelings, conveys an experience, or makes a statement we deem meaningful in some way. By a portion of us, I mean any number of people, from all to one. Something can be art for you and just for you. Anything can be art, but the word is usually used in conjunction with things that a great number of people have agreed are meaningful, like sculpture, painting, filmmaking, music, theater, the art of storytelling. Video games employ visual arts, performance arts, music, all to a certain degree of fidelity, relying upon the imagination to fill in the rest, same way the art of writing does. Any expression can be art. All expression nothing but an attempt at communication. Categories of art are just names given to different types of containers for that communication. Video games are one such container. Like all of art, they exist to propagate an idea, a feeling, an experience. They act as a vessel for the intangible to reach others. Video games don't just have a reader, an observer, a listener. They also have a player, an engaged, integral part of the art. Having that interactivity, having the player be inside, allows video games to convey extraordinarily hard to impart experiences.
Your conscious ferments in it, no larger than a single grain of malt. You don't have to do anything anymore. Ever. Never, ever.
I could talk for hours about the importance of Zapffe, The Last Messiah, or Emil Cioran as a thinker. But I, just like them, would find it hard to impart the exact feelings of despair and hopelessness that come after years spent thinking about life and existence. A pacifist might read a revenge tale, see a movie that starts with someone being wronged, but those fail in comparison to him relying on a character for help in moments of agony, in moments where the game over screen kept coming, where that door that stopped death almost burst open if it were not for them. And then having that friend be ripped away.
Please stop! Please don't shoot! Joel, please get up! No! No!
You may have done something else with your years. Contemplation on meaning and existence pushed aside, take the children to school, work, or study for exams. Reading their works hits upon the limitation of the written arts. Maybe you refused to allow existential horror to touch you, refused introspection because of the darkness it invited. But a video game can show you, exploit your work reward systems, take you on a journey of meaning and contemplation, place you in a position where an idea, an experience, a feeling can completely take you over. This is what a video game does best. It can transport you to different worlds, force you into situations that you would never be in, pressure you, squeeze your time through difficulty and strife, create the perfect environment for you to experience something that might otherwise be almost impossible to convey. Mechanical satisfaction, symmetry, dichotomy. It can elevate visual art with expectation, tension, or context. It can lower your heart rate and prepare you for a single piece of musical perfection, one that might otherwise reach distracted ears. Now back to that hidden movement screen. Feeling nostalgic yet? Maybe for this. Some people say games were better designed back then, more mature. The first StarCraft had a more serious story. Did it? They say Kerrigan wasn't shaped with high heels back then. That the first Diablo was a dark, gothic tale. not this colorful thing. That the 1994 XCOM was scary and took itself seriously, unlike modern takes on it. Others like to say that it is you who has changed, that nostalgia misshapes your memories. But what is nostalgia really? Or better yet, what is you? Bear with me for a moment here. Trying to find the right level of depth for this video was not an easy task. Consciousness and nostalgia are both names given to emergent properties of neural networks like our brain. That just means there are properties that appear at a certain level of organization and cannot be predicted from properties found at low levels. As Dennett would joke, the study of one neuron is called neuroscience. When you get to two of them, that's called psychology. Jokes of questionable quality aside, emergent functions cannot be explained by the parts alone, but rather must be explained by the properties of the parts and their interactions. This is no different than trying to explain emergent gameplay to someone who's only played linear, set-piece-driven video games. Yes, you can craft things, there is building and harvesting. And there are other players, so you're all on an island, no, there's no story, no, there aren't any levels. The gameplay is not to be found within its composite parts, but emerges from the interaction of multiple things that on their own do not provide much. This term, emergence, used to have a bad reputation in science, just as the word consciousness did, because of the general reductive approach science has. Properties that cannot be predicted by studying the small parts had an air of metaphysics about them, of the unexplained. This is by no means a perfect analogy, and we'll get to some of the problems. But calling it consciousness is like using the term driving feel to describe a set of useful parameters in the operation of a vehicle, containing cornering speed, acceleration, vehicular dimensions, engine noise, vibration, braking distance, and many other things, each one useful for optimizing driving operation. None of them found in the smallest parts that make up that vehicle, and although you can measure acceleration or dimensions, the driving feel remains a non-quantitative experience, the exact same way consciousness is. Consciousness enables an organism with multiple sensory channels to navigate its environment and satisfy its biological needs efficiently. The way wind feels on your face, the way smell lingers, the sensation of grabbing something with your hand, your physical size, are all a small subset of the many things that exist under the name of consciousness. So if consciousness is nothing but a term given to a loose collection of things that emerge from a combination between the processing of information in these networks and the projection of self, projection useful to conceptually trace borderlines between said self and other entities or objects, to better compete for resources and optimize for preference satisfaction, then art would be the attempt to communicate non-specific, complex things between those networks. One might try to describe a state, an experience, a feeling, or use a brush. It became clear, even as AI research took its first steps, that there shouldn't be any difference between biological neural networks and artificial ones. So we started using these simulations to look for emergent properties like consciousness. These models allow an agent to project itself into a space constantly updated from sensory evidence and strive to minimize the difference between a preferred state and the experienced ones. The idea being that if we take the reason why consciousness is useful in the biological world and mimic that usefulness in our simulations, we might see consciousness emerge. I kept emphasizing dimensions in my examples because self-boundaries are an important part of what we describe as consciousness. That elusive first-person point of view experience requires projection in geometrical space. What we found is that even early generations of these types of projected simulations exhibit extraordinary properties of what we can only describe as consciousness. From a perspectival perception to a mindness or the ability to perceive ownage of something, ability that is crucial in body agency. Nostalgia sits above conscious experience at a slightly increased level of organizational complexity. Once we add even a basic memory to these agents and the ability for them to project themselves into their past and into possible future outcomes, we see behavioral changes that are consistent with essential properties of nostalgia. Nostalgia is often described as taking pleasure in recalling positive, soothing past events as triggered by negative feelings. Programmed to constantly compare a preferred state to a current one and try to minimize the difference between them, when faced with a difficult or non-optimal circumstance, these agents try to minimize that difference by constantly projecting themselves into a better past situation. Even though this is not a solution, as the memory projection doesn't change the comparison between the current state and the preferred one, they continue doing this as some sort of an emotional regulation strategy. Remember, there's nothing special about consciousness. It is an emergent phenomena, parts of which can be observed even in primitive projective AI models. Models that, once given the ability to recall things, also exhibit nostalgia. As we get better and our models more complex, we expect to see other high-level psychological phenomena emerge. As human beings, we enjoy the delusional idea that consciousness is some extraordinary trait of ours, and nostalgia this unique human feeling.